The night was cold and quiet. Captain Ray Walker was walking through the empty spaceport, checking the systems one last time before heading home. He had worked here for years, fixing broken ships and old machines. Nothing exciting ever happened on this side of Earth. But tonight was different. A sudden flash lit up the sky, followed by a loud crashing sound in the nearby hills. Ray froze, eyes wide. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't a meteor. Something had fallen from space, and it was close. He jumped into his old hoverbike and sped toward the crash site. When Ray reached the spot, he saw smoke rising from the trees. There, in the middle of the forest, was a small, damaged escape pod. Half buried in the ground, the pod door was open, barely hanging on. Ray approached slowly, his flashlight shaking. In his hand, he had seen escape pods before, but never like this. This one had strange glowing symbols on its sides, pulsing with a soft blue light. Then he heard a sound, a soft, weak cry coming from inside the pod. He stepped closer and peered in, and there she was, a girl, no older than 20. Lay curled up on the floor of the pod. Her skin was pale with a light shimmer, her hair long and silver, her eyes big, violet, and glowing faintly open slowly as she looked up at him. She was clearly not human. Before Ray could say anything, she reached out with her trembling hand and whispered, "Please, I beg you, take me as your servant." Ray was stunned. What was she saying? Why would an alien girl beg like that? She tried to stand but collapsed again, her body too weak. Ray caught her just in time. "Who are you?" he asked, but she didn't answer. Her eyes closed, and she fainted in his arms. Ray didn't have time to think. He wrapped her in his fag coat and carried her back to his workshop. He couldn't leave her there. Not in the cold. Not like that. Back at his workshop, Ray placed her gently on a spare cot and connected a med scanner to her arm. The machine blinked and beeped, unable to read her vitals. "She's not from any known system," Ray said to himself, confused and worried. The girl slept for hours, breathing slowly, glowing softly. Ray sat nearby, watching her, wondering what kind of trouble he had just walked into. That night, strange things began to happen. Ray's scanner system started acting up, showing signals that weren't supposed to be there. A repeating code flashed on his screen. Unknown origin, encrypted language. Something, or someone, was searching. He looked at the sleeping girl and whispered, "Who's after you?" Just before sunrise, she woke up. Ray gave her water, and she drank slowly, eyes filled with fear. "My name is Alira," she said, her voice soft and shaking. "I'm from Varelia." Ray had never heard of that planet. "What happened to you?" he asked. "They destroyed my world," she replied, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I escaped, but they are coming for me." Ray felt a chill run through his spine. "Who's coming?" he asked. "They are not like you," she said. "They don't care about life, only power." She paused, looked him in the eyes and said, "They will kill anyone who helps me." Ray looked outside the window, where the stars still hung quietly in the sky. But something inside him said this was just the calm before the storm. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the power dropped for a second. His alarm system blared. An unidentified craft had entered Earth's lower orbit. Ray ran to his screen, and his heart sank. It wasn't a government ship, and it definitely wasn't human. He turned to Alira, who was now sitting up, fear written all over her face. "They found me," she said in a whisper. Ray didn't know what to do. He wasn't a soldier, just a mechanic. But something deep inside told him he couldn't let her be taken. "Not like this. Not again." Alira stood up slowly and walked to him. "I can serve you," she said. "I can fix your machines, cook your food, anything you want. But please," she looked into his eyes, "don't send me away." Ray nodded. Not because he needed a servant, but because he had made his decision. He was going to protect her, no matter what came next. Outside, the stars began to shift, and somewhere in the blackness of space, a hunter locked onto their location. The silent threat had arrived. Ray hadn't slept all night. He sat in his workshop, staring at the stars through the broken glass panel above his desk. Beside him, the alien girl Alira slept quietly under a blanket, her silver hair glowing softly in the dim light. Her words echoed in his mind again and again. "They are coming," she had said. Ray didn't know who they were, but he could feel the weight of danger pressing closer, like a silent wave waiting to crash. He stood up and walked to the scanner, hoping the strange signal from last night had vanished. But it hadn't, in fact. It was stronger now, clearer, and closer. Ray's fingers moved quickly across the console, running a scan on the frequency, unknown tech, advanced encryption. And not from Earth. This wasn't some satellite glitch. Someone was tracking something, or someone, and that someone was sleeping just 10 feet away from him. Ray turned and looked at her again. She looked so fragile, like she didn't belong in this world. But even now, something about her felt powerful, like a storm hiding inside a calm ocean. He walked over to her, hesitated, and gently shook her shoulder. "Wake up," he whispered. "We need to talk, Alira." Opened her eyes slowly, still tired but alert. She sat up and looked around like she had forgotten where she was for a second. Ray offered her a warm drink, and she took it with both hands, drinking carefully. "I scanned the sky," he said. "They're close." Her eyes lowered, and she nodded. "I know," she said. "I can feel them." Ray leaned forward. "You said you're from Varelia, but that place isn't in any chart I've seen." She looked at him, her voice soft but heavy. "It was erased." Ray blinked. "Erased?" She nodded. "Not just destroyed, but removed from every map, every record. They didn't want the universe to remember we ever existed." Ray was silent for a moment, trying to understand what kind of enemy could do something like that. He asked her how she survived. Alira looked down. "I was chosen for special training," she said. "I was supposed to serve high command as a helper, maybe more. But I ran away." Ray didn't press further, but one thing kept bothering him. She had called herself a servant, yet she didn't act like one. She moved with grace, spoke with purpose, and even now, her presence filled the room like someone who carried more than a servant's past. He decided to test something. He walked over to the broken power module lying on the table. Something he had tried to fix for days. "Can you help me with this?" he asked, curious. Alira stood up slowly, walked to the machine, and placed her hands on it. Her fingers glided over the surface, and suddenly, the lights inside the module blinked to life. Ray stepped back, shocked. "You fixed it," he said. She shook her head. "I didn't fix it," she said. "I told it to remember how to work." Ray stared at her, speechless. This wasn't just talent or knowledge. This was something else, something unnatural. "What are you?" he asked quietly. Alira looked at him with sad eyes. "A servant," she said again. "But I was made different." Later that day, Ray gave her a space in the workshop to rest. And as she cleaned and arranged things, she did it with strange precision. Tools found their proper places before he even pointed them out. Old machines started humming again when she passed by. Time felt slower, smoother when she moved, like she carried a different rhythm than the rest of the world. But peace didn't last long. That night, the warning alarm rang again, louder this time. Ray jumped out of bed and ran to the scanner. A ship had entered Earth's atmosphere, small, but fast. Not a warship, but definitely not a cargo ship either. It was looking for something, and its route passed directly above Ray's workshop. Alira walked in quietly, already knowing. "They've sent a hunter," she said. "A single one. Fast, deadly, and without mercy." Ray's hands shook slightly as he closed the scanner. "We should call for help," he said. "No one will come," she replied. "No one will believe, and no one will fight them." Ray looked at her. "Then what do we do?" Alira stepped forward, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "I serve," she said, "and I protect those who accept me." Ray didn't fully understand what she meant, but in that moment, he knew something was about to change forever. This wasn't just about hiding anymore. It was about survival outside. The stars were calm, But above them, in silent skies, something sharp and deadly was descending fast, and it was hunting the last servant of Varelia. The storm didn't arrive with thunder, it came with silence, a shimmer in the air, a soft vibration in the ground. Ray didn't see the hunter arrive, but he felt it. Something had changed. The sky looked the same, but the wind whispered warnings. In a language only instinct understood, inside the workshop, Alira stood still, her eyes closed, her breathing calm. Ray watched her from a distance, unsure if she was meditating or listening to something beyond human range. Then her lips moved. Just one word. He's here. Ray grabbed the only weapon he had, a weak plasma cutter. Half-charged and barely functional. He wasn't a fighter, he knew that. But letting her face this alone felt wrong. Even if she had powers, even if she wasn't from Earth, she had trusted him. And that meant something. Suddenly, every light in the workshop flickered and died. The air became heavy. Then the wall cracked open, not with a blast, but like the metal had melted in silence. And through that opening stepped a figure in black armor, smooth as glass, tall as the ceiling. Its helmet had no face, just a mirror-like surface that reflected both Ray and Alira. The hunter had arrived. It didn't speak. It didn't threaten. It just raised one arm and pointed at Alira. Ray stepped in front of her without thinking. "Leave her alone," he said, voice shaking. "She's under my protection." The hunter tilted its head, almost confused. Then it moved, faster than anything Ray had ever seen. He felt the heat of a blast pass his shoulder and smash into the wall behind him. He would have been dead if Alira hadn't pulled him aside at the last second. "No more hiding," she whispered, her voice no longer soft. It echoed with a different tone, now firm, ancient, and powerful. She stepped forward, raising one hand, her skin glowing brighter with every breath. Symbols began to appear on her arms, pulsing with blue and gold light. The hunter paused, its arm still raised but unsure. It had found her, yes, but it hadn't expected this version of her. Ray watched as Alira's feet lifted slightly off the ground. The air around her shimmered, bending like heat waves. She raised both hands, and the machines in the workshop began to hum, as if waking up from sleep. Sparks flew, energy pulsed, and for a moment, it felt like time itself had slowed. Then the battle began. The hunter fired, but the beam bent in the air, curving away from Alira like it had changed its mind. She moved like water, flowing, spinning, not fighting with fists, but with presence. Each step made the ground tremble. Softly, her hands moved in patterns Ray didn't understand, but every motion sent waves of invisible energy through the room. The hunter stumbled back, its armor cracking under a force it couldn't calculate. Ray watched, stunned, as the girl who called herself a servant became something else entirely. Not a weapon, not a warrior, but something in between, a protector, maybe, or a guardian from a forgotten world. And yet, she still looked like the same girl who had asked him for shelter, for mercy, for a place to belong. The hunter tried to retreat, stepping back into the shadows, but Alira's voice rang out, strong and clear. "You will not return to them." She raised her hand one last time, and light exploded from her palm, not fire, not electricity, just pure white light. It surrounded the hunter like a cage, locking it in place. Then, slowly, the figure faded, disintegrating into specks of dust, carried away by a wind no one could feel. Silence returned. Ray dropped the plasma cutter. His legs weak, Alira floated down, her glow fading, her face pale and tired. She nearly collapsed, but Ray caught her again. Just like the first night. He didn't say anything, not yet. There were too many questions, too many things his mind couldn't explain. He carried her to the cot and sat beside her as she closed her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered, barely awake. "I didn't want you to see that part of me." Ray looked at her, this strange girl from the stars. "You don't have to hide anymore," he said gently. But in the back of his mind, he knew something important had changed. This wasn't just a runaway alien servant. This was someone powerful, someone wanted, someone hunted. and if one hunter had come, others would follow. The stars outside the broken glass above still looked peaceful, but peace was an illusion. Now he knew what she truly was, and what he had chosen to protect. Ray had seen many things in his life: broken ships, failed engines, and old soldiers who talked more than they fought, but nothing had prepared him for this. Not for the girl who floated in midair, not for the light that erased an armored killer in a single breath, not for the silence that followed, the kind of silence that only came after something massive had shifted in the universe. The morning was late to arrive. The sky turned orange, but Ray's hand still shook. Alira lay resting on the cot, her body quiet, but her skin still faintly glowing. He hadn't moved from her side, not because he was afraid, but because he didn't know what would happen if she opened her eyes again. When she finally did, it was slow, like waking from a nightmare. She sat up and looked around, her face full of guilt, not pride. "I didn't want to show you that," she whispered. "You weren't supposed to see." Ray didn't answer right away. He stood, poured water into a cup, and handed it to her. "You don't have to hide here," he said. "Not from me." Alira held the cup with both hands, quiet. For a while, then she said something he wasn't expecting. "There will be more." Ray looked at her. "More hunters?" She nodded. "Yes, and worse." The words sank in like cold iron. Ray walked to his scanner again. The skies were empty now, but that didn't mean they were safe. Whatever tech was following her, it didn't need ships, it needed coordinates. And the hunter had already sent a signal before it died. Alira stood up, slower than usual, her energy clearly drained, but her voice had strength again. "I need to leave," she said. "You helped me, and I won't bring death to your doorstep." Ray turned sharply. "You think I saved you just to let you walk out alone?" "I'm not afraid of them," he added. "I'm just tired of pretending Earth is too small to matter." Alira stared at him, confused but moved. She was taught that humans were selfish, fearful, limited, but Ray wasn't like that. He didn't run, even when he had every reason to. As she looked at him, something inside her changed. Not her powers, not her mission, something deeper, something she thought had been erased with her home planet. Trust. That night, the winds howled louder. Ray upgraded his defenses, if they could even be called that. Old shields, rusty drones, and half-finished turrets from his scrapyard patched together with duct tape and blind hope. He knew it wouldn't stop a full attack, but it would send a message. He wasn't hiding anymore. Alira stood beside him, silent as he worked. "Let me help," she said, placing her hand on one of the broken drones. With a soft glow and a gentle hum, the drone lit up, more powerful than ever. Ray looked at her, amazed. "You're more than a servant," he said. "I was never only a servant," she replied, "but I chose to live as one." Before he could ask why, the ground trembled. Not like last time, not a silent arrival. This was a direct landing, fast and bold. Ray ran to the roof and looked toward the sky. Fire trails cut through the clouds, and moments later, something crashed into the forest with force strong enough to shake the soil beneath his feet. Alira stood beside him, her expression still. "It's not a hunter," she said. "It's a collector." Ray had no idea what that meant. Collector? "A machine that doesn't ask, doesn't talk," she said. "It takes whatever it was sent to find." He knew what that meant. It had come for her, but this time, it wasn't just her life at risk. His land, his people, his planet, everything was now part of a fight he never asked for. And yet, part of him felt alive. For the first time in years, he wasn't just fixing machines. He was part of something bigger. The trees began to burn as the collector walked out of the forest. It was huge, 3 times the size of the hunter, shaped like a giant insect. Its arms moved like blades, slicing trees as if they were paper. And on its back, lights flashed like cold red eyes. Scanning, locking, hunting. Ray took a deep breath, grabbed his old gear, and turned to Alira. "If this is war," he said, "then let's show them Earth doesn't kneel." The collector let out a sound, not a roar, not a voice, but a deep, mechanical hum, a warning, a promise. And just like that, the battle for Earth had begun. The fires in the forest had not died. They had only learned to breathe slower. Smoke rose in the distance like silent messengers, whispering the truth across the sky. Something dangerous had arrived on Earth, and it had come looking for a girl who had once been royalty among stars, but she no longer wore a crown. Now she wore fear, silence, and a name that no longer belonged in any history book. Ray stood outside his workshop, gripping a tool that could barely pass as a weapon. Beside him, Alira said nothing, her silver hair moving with the wind, her face unreadable. For a long time, neither of them spoke. They simply watched the smoke dance and the red lights of the collector pulse in the woods. And then she said it, quietly, like someone speaking to ghosts. "I used to give orders to thousands." Ray turned to her, slowly. "You were a soldier?" he asked. She shook her head. "I was a ruler." The words hung in the air like dust in sunlight, heavy. Strange and impossible to ignore. Ray blinked. "A queen?" Alira laughed once, but there was no joy in it. "No," she said. "Queens had power. I was a figurehead, a face, a name meant to control hearts. My people loved me," she continued. "But love wasn't enough when war arrived." Ray didn't ask for more, but she kept speaking, because part of her needed someone to hear it, even just once. "My father made weapons so powerful. They scared the stars themselves. But he also made enemies, and one day they came." She paused, looking up at the sky, as if her memories were painted there. "They didn't want to kill me," she said. "They wanted to use me, marry their leaders, give them my bloodline, make my face their symbol. So I ran." Ray was quiet, his thoughts racing. Everything he knew about her was changing with every word. She wasn't just an alien or a refugee. She was a survivor of a fallen dynasty, a royal prisoner who had chosen servitude over slavery. And now the people who chased her wanted more than capture. They wanted control. A loud beep broke the silence. Ray rushed to the scanner and saw something that made his stomach twist. A fleet, not massive, not yet, but big enough to block out the sun if they wanted to. And one of the ships had sent a signal to Earth. Ray opened the message, and a cold voice filled the room. "This is the Dominion fleet," it said. "You are harboring a runaway subject. Surrender her within 24 Earth hours." The voice continued, "or your planet will be designated hostile." Alira closed her eyes, as if she already knew this moment was coming. Ray stared at the screen, then at her, then back again. His heart pounded, not just from fear, but from anger. "How many people will they hurt to get to you?" he asked. Alira's answer was simple: "Everyone." He turned to his drawer, pulled out a small communicator, one he hadn't touched in years. "I need to call some people," he said. Alira looked at him, puzzled. "Old friends," Ray added. "Ones who still owe me favors." That day, the air around the workshop filled with dust and noise. Old ships landed, one by one, carrying humans from all corners of Earth. An ex-soldier missing an arm, but not his courage. A pilot who once raced through asteroid belts for sport. A pair of engineers who built deadly drones from kitchen scraps. They came because they believed Ray. Because they didn't trust the message from the sky. Because somewhere deep down, humanity had stopped fearing aliens the day they met one who begged for kindness. They gathered inside the workshop, turning tools into weapons and scrap into shields. Alira showed them how to use her technology, how to power Earth's old machines with starlight instead of electricity. And as she moved through the room, her presence no longer quiet or afraid. The people watched her not as a stranger, but as something else, a symbol of defiance, of lost things worth fighting for. Ray stood at the center of it all, feeling something he hadn't felt in years: purpose, not as a captain or mechanic, but as a protector. The message from the sky had given Earth a deadline. Now Earth had given them an answer, and above them, orbiting silently, the Dominion watched. Their countdown had begun. But so had humanity's rebellion *, They didn't sleep that night. No one did. The stars above had never felt so close, so dangerous, so alive. The Dominion fleet hung in the sky like a promise made of metal, silent, unmoving, watching. Ray stood on the roof of his workshop, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the cold blinking. Lights far above. Below him, the place that once smelled of oil and dust now hummed with strange energy. Alira's tech had changed everything. Old engines now pulsed with light. Scrap metal sang with quiet power. People who once fixed vending machines now built cannons from washing parts and shield domes from broken farm bots. No generals, no governments. No orders, just people, tired of being small, ready to be loud. Alira walked among them, quiet but strong. She had stopped hiding. Her silver eyes no longer dimmed when people looked at her. Instead, they met each gaze, one by one, and in return, she was seen not as a servant, not as a weapon, but as one of them, a stranger who had chosen Earth, a lost heir who had found. Her voice, Ray gathered everyone by the landing pad before sunrise. They stood around in grease-stained suits and patched jackets, holding weapons that barely looked finished. Ray stepped forward, cleared his throat, and raised his voice. "They gave us 24 hours. He said, "It's been 23. They expect us to kneel," he continued. "They think we're too small to resist." Someone in the back shouted, "So let's make M." Regret showing up. A small cheer rose, weak at first, but it grew. People weren't just scared anymore. They were angry, they were ready. The sky above shimmered, and a massive ship began to descend. Not fast, not in a hurry. It didn't need to be. The Dominion knew Earth had no armies, no fleets, no space cannons, only dirt and sweat and belief. But they had underestimated one thing: human stubbornness. The Dominion's voice echoed across the sky again, louder this time. "This is your final warning." It said, "Surrender the fugitive or face the consequences." Ray stepped onto the landing pad, turned on the frequency, and replied, "This is Earth," he said. "Come get her." The response was instant. The air cracked, the sky split open. Dozens of drop pods rained from orbit, slamming into fields and hillsides like thunderbolts. The ground shook, birds scattered, and silence turned into panic, but the people didn't run. They moved into position, just as planned. Ray took the southern field with 3 drones, and a cannon that still sparked when it turned. Alira climbed onto a tower, arms stretched wide, her palms glowing. She whispered something in a language no one understood, and the sky above shimmered. A thin wall of blue light appeared above them, a temporary shield powered by nothing but her own energy. Then the enemy came, tall machines with sharp legs, faceless enforcers with glowing visors, and flying scouts that screamed as they dove. The battle wasn't fair, it wasn't clean, but it was loud, real, and unstoppable. Humans fought with everything they had: slingshot bombs, hacked drones, modified farming bots turned war beasts. Ray fought with a plasma rifle that jammed every third shot, but he kept firing, because every second they held the line gave Alira more time. And she was doing something none of them could fully understand. She wasn't just blocking attacks. She was calling something buried deep in the sky. Something older than the Dominion, something that remembered her bloodline. One of the enemy scouts locked onto her and fired. The tower shook, but she didn't move. Her eyes turned silver white, and her body lit up like a star preparing to burst. The blast bent midair and dissolved before touching her. Even the enemy paused, unsure whether they were fighting a person or a force of nature. Then everything changed. Far above, just beyond Earth's orbit, a ripple tore through space. A massive ship emerged, not Dominion, not Earth-made, but ancient. Covered in vines of golden metal and alive with music no one could hear. Alira's voice rose above the noise of battle. "They answered," she whispered. "The guardians of Varelia still live." The enemy saw the ship and froze. Ray looked up, not understanding what it was, but feeling hope bloom in his chest like fire. The golden vessel moved with grace. almost like it was gliding through a dream, and as it entered Earth's sky, the Dominion fleet began to retreat, not because they were defeated, but because they were afraid. The battle wasn't over, but the tide had turned. For the first time, Earth wasn't alone. It had friends in the stars, and a servant who had become its shield. The sky, once filled with fire and metal, now held silence again, but it wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence just before a choice is made. A world on edge, hearts still racing. The air still thick with the scent of smoke and stars. The golden ship from the ancient Varelian fleet hovered above Earth. Unmoving, majestic, it did not speak, it didn't need to. Its presence alone said one thing clearly. Alira's past was not lost. Her bloodline had not been forgotten, and someone, somewhere, still remembered who she was. Ray stood on the scorched field, his arm bleeding, his face covered in dust and sweat. He looked up at the ship, then at Alira, who stood at the center of the battlefield. Her hands still glowed faintly, and her eyes were distant, as if she were listening to voices only she could hear. For a moment, everything was still. Even the Dominion ships, though retreating, lingered at the edge of Earth's orbit, unsure whether to run or prepare for war again. Alira turned to Ray, her voice calm but heavy. "They are calling me home," she said. Ray didn't answer right away, his hands clenched without meaning to. He knew this moment was coming, he just didn't think it would feel like this. "You always belong to the stars," he said quietly. She walked closer, close enough to see the pain he was hiding. "But I didn't survive for stars," she said. "I survived for moments like this." Ray chuckled. "But it was dry and tired. You really think this is a moment worth keeping?" Alira smiled faintly. "It's not the battle I'll remember," she said. "It's the man who stood beside me. When I had nothing, the golden ship sent a signal, not a voice, but an invitation. A beam of soft light surrounded her, ready to lift her into the sky. Everyone stopped to watch. Even the wounded, even the children hiding in shelters. They looked up, wondering what she would choose. Alira looked at Earth one more time, at the broken fields, the scorched forests, the makeshift defenses still humming with unstable power. She saw pain, yes, but she also saw something rare. She saw courage without pride, kindness without condition, and hearts that beat not for power, but for each other. "I was made to serve," she said out loud, not to Ray, not to the stars, but to herself. "And I did, but now I choose who I serve." The light around her pulsed, then slowly faded. The golden ship remained, but its engines dimmed, waiting for her answer, and her answer was to step away from the beam. She turned her back to the sky and walked toward Ray, toward Earth, toward the life she had chosen. Not because she was forced, but because she was finally free. Above them, the ancient ship sent one last signal. A single note of music that echoed across the atmosphere. Then, slowly, it rose and vanished into the stars. It did not mourn. It understood. Ray looked at her, confused and moved. "You're staying?" She nodded. "There's still work to do," she said. "Machines to fix, stories to write, and a planet to rebuild." He smirked. "You're not exactly low maintenance, you know." She smiled back. "Neither are you." The Dominion ships, sensing something ancient and terrible behind Earth's choice, began to withdraw, not defeated but warned. This planet had changed. It was no longer small, no longer silent, because someone stood up for it. Someone who wasn't even born here. And as the smoke cleared, and the sun rose behind the hills, Ray and Alira stood side by side, not a soldier and a queen, not a protector and a servant, but two survivors, building something new, something better, together.